Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the webinar today. My name is Bhakti Pujara, partner at Chugh LLP Santa Clara. Thank God, people, we do not have to wear a mask right now. I'm sure many of us are entrepreneurs attending today. I know you all are missing the in-person networking and business development. But you know what? When life gives you lemon, make lemonade. There is Zoom, Hangout, Microsoft Teams, or even social distancing networking. There are many businesses that have started during the difficult times. Businesses have to go on, especially startups. Today, the panel will discuss on how startups can survive and even grow during the COVID-19 times. So let me introduce you all to the panel for today. We have Khushbu Doshi, CPA Team Lead, Santa Clara, Jyoti Javeri, Team Lead, Santa Clara, Neha Kernwal, Senior Tax Accountant, Cerritos, Pooja Srivastav, Senior Tax Accountant, Santa Clara, and again myself, Bhakti Pujara. So diving into the webinar topic today, this pandemic is different from the recession of 2008. Not all the businesses are losing. Some of them are actually facing increased demands. Stock prices for some of the companies are actually rising. In fact, some companies are even hiring. Question comes, how? Or rather, what can we do to make sure that the startup short-term and long-term goals align together? I'm sure you entrepreneurs are very smart and have already started planning, but we will still brainstorm on certain important strategies. First of all, it is very important to make a short-term strategic plan. Most of your assumptions or forecasts about customers, markets, revenue may not be true any longer. It is needed to break down the long-term goals to short-term plans and update it on a regular basis, maybe weekly or even daily. You should work with your team and CPAs to reassess your cost and revenue every quarter or actually every month now. Startups have very strict budgets and great business plans. You know what? Please revisit these plans and determine how COVID crisis affects these budgets and plans. Companies will want to stress test financial plans for multiple scenarios to understand the potential impact on the financial performances and assess how long the impact may continue. If the business is impacted, then it is needed to revise these budgets to remain agile. Companies will have to consider minimum operating requirements, including key dependencies on workforce, vendors, technology, etc. Revise your sales targets and deliverables. Next important strategy is to allocate resources based on short-term and flexible plans. It is very important to manage your working capital requirements. Make sure you're not overpaying taxes. Take advantages of discounts. Extend payables where possible. Manage and expedite collections. Revisit your cash flows. Act quickly to reallocate funding to capture growth, reduce cost, strengthen your ability to the supply chain risk. My colleagues will discuss this in greater detail in the webinar today. I would like to add that it may be time to offer new products or services. Decide which scenarios make the most sense to pursue and then build a detailed financial plan around them. Like sustaining existing businesses and restoring operations as quickly as possible, restructuring the company to meet the changing demands or radically different customer behaviors. Financial teams must work with senior leaderships to identify a coherent set of initiatives, determine how to execute on them, and track their performances. For example, a company decides to shift resources away from those products that had seen a radical drop in sales due to the spread of the virus and shift towards the products that were holding steady. Carefully consider the upstream and downstream impact of your decisions. Let's hear in detail on some of these important strategies from our panel today. In these difficult times, you may want to hold on to cash. Jyoti, please can you share your thoughts on cash management?
Sure. Thank you, Bhakti. So the biggest issue most startups are facing currently is cash management. As we all know, the world is currently experiencing an extraordinary situation which has resulted in a lot of uncertainty and anxiety. As no one is sure when this pandemic will come to an end, it's important for us as a startup to prepare for further lockdowns and preserve cash for this period, which is crucial for several reasons. To begin with, we will need to determine how much cash you need and for how long. Next, you would need to try to gauge how long this problem will last. Are the shutdowns of the businesses going to be temporary blip in the economy? Or will they drive the US into a long recession? Based on which you will need to actively engage with your financing partners. One of the key elements of survival is access to capital. As a startup or small business, you should realize your investors are also asking themselves how this pandemic will affect their business model. Given this current scenario, capital may not be easily available. Hence, the companies may need to look at near-term loans or capital raising, debt refinancing, or additional credit support from banks or investors. Next, you may also want to evaluate your short-term liquidity. The COVID-19 pandemic has created severe disruption in the global financial system, with many emerging market and developing countries facing liquidity shortages. So one would need to clarify the company's cash conservation approach in this COVID-19 world, including a near and a midterm evaluation of cash flow, which is applied and communicated to each functional and geographic area, which means everyone should understand what will be spent on operations, on sales, marketing, and other critical areas. When one does short-term cash flow monitoring, it allows you to predict cash flow pressures and intervene in a timely manner. This is basically the amount of money coming in and being spent on daily, weekly, or monthly basis. It's the day-to-day finances that keep your business running. You need to maintain strict discipline on working capital, particularly around collecting receivables and managing inventory buildup. Liquid cash available to the business. Be creative and proactively intervene to lighten the working capital cycle, which means the length of time it takes to convert the total net working capital into cash. Next would be to assess the financial and operational risk and respond quickly. For this, you would need to monitor the direct cost escalations and the direct impact on your overall product margins. You may need to intervene and renegotiate wherever necessary, which would also require you to revise your revenue goals, the product timelines, create a new business model and operating plan. And simultaneously, you need to communicate them clearly to your investors and to your employees. I would also like to throw some light on supply chain risk. We as startup need to strengthen our ability to react to supply chain risk, for which we need to maintain regular contact with suppliers to identify any potential risks. Monitor the pressures that may be impacting your customers, suppliers, contractors, or alliance partners. If need be, you can perform stress tests on any tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers that may be impacted. This is especially important for sectors such as automotive and pharmaceutical, which are highly dependent on the third-party suppliers. Plan your projections under the drastic scenarios. You may also want to consider alternate supply chain options. Companies that source parts or materials from suppliers in areas which are significantly impacted by COVID will definitely want to look at alternatives. And lastly, you will also need to create a temporary capacity to meet your current customer obligations. Thank you. I hope this information is useful and helps you in these extraordinary times. Over to you, Bhakti.
Thank you, Jyoti. You know what, this really helps me conclude that it is very important to revisit your cash flows very frequently. Jyoti, one question for you. Can you tell me how can we optimize the net working capital?
Sure, Bhakti. That's a very good question, actually. So firstly, we would need to stabilize cash for long term, which can be done by improving the net working capital practices. When I say we would need to optimize cash conversion, that means you should put in more extra efforts on collecting the receivables which are outstanding from a very long time, or avoid making payments which are not yet due. Basically, you're trying to lengthen your payment terms. And lastly, selling obsolete or slow moving inventory, which will help you to optimize your net working capital. Over to you, Bhakti.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. That answers my question. We have always heard that we should spend wisely and optimize cost. Pooja, please can you share some of your strategies to reduce the cost during these difficult times?
Thank you, Bhakti. Hello, everyone. So we've heard that Amazon sales are up by 40% this year, and the profit is almost doubled. We know that Facebook's profit has jumped to 98%, and Apple has increased sales all over the world by the second quarter. These numbers are real. And yes, I'm talking about the big tech giants. And so these numbers just give us a brief and a look on that everything is not as bad as it looks. Yes, COVID has given us a sense of a bad feeling that everything's going down the drains, but the opportunity that lies within COVID is exponential. Hello, everyone. This is Pooja. I'd like to take you through and brief you a little bit about the strategies that can help and that we can work with reducing your cost and having a nice cash flow that's coming in. What are the common things that we have among these tech giants? If there's one thing that's common, it's that they are cash rich. And when you're cash rich and when you have some money in your kitty, you're not thinking of the calamity as how you can save yourself. But when you come through that calamity, you're thinking of what is my next opportunity. So right there in your thought process of how do I save myself, you're not looking at how do you save yourself, but you're looking at how do I create more money out of money. And that is the basis of my talk today. We're going to learn something new. It's called the net burn rate. I don't know how many people have heard about it. It's basically talking about the cash in and cash out. And some of the largest and the most successful corporations and entities in the world have a negative burn rate. That means your expenses are lower than the amount of cash you eventually have. How can we do that? And this is not rocket science. Reduce your costs. This is a basic, everybody knows about it. And increase your cash flow. And how do we increase that cash flow? Liquid cash has been the strongest point that has come out in COVID for a business to run successfully. And I don't have to go deep diving into it. You know that there could be a month that's looking good, and the second month you might have no revenue at all. What saves you in this time is having some kind of cash that keeps you going for 3 to 6 months. Reduce capital investment where there is a possibility. So you keep the cash that you have instead of investing it in X, Y, Z zones, which are not required at this point in time. Avoid taking any additional loans. If you don't need it, don't take it. And I think we would advise you contact your CPA, your financial planner, your wealth manager, a trusted advisor that you have at this point in time. It has become an inevitable service that you need to have somebody by your side. If you're a business that's launching, if you're a business that's in a startup stage, it's important to have this. It's like saying, just to draw an example and give you in a layman's language, it's like saying I'm a 30-year-old and I have no disease and I'm young, so I'll never have COVID. So let's do this. Let's kind of do away with an insurance cost. Don't do that. Don't get the costs that are essential to you. Take those costs off. Don't fire your CPA or a trusted professional that is helping your business grow. These are essential services. Make sure you have a lawyer on hand, a CPA on hand. What is it? There are ways to do this, and there are 4 ways that I would, take you through. One would be to convert the fixed cost to variable costs. So for example, you have a place that has that you're renting, and you have fixed salaries. These are two big costs that most organizations have trouble with in the COVID. You had an office for 100 people, reduce it down to 20 people. But guess what? In the past 6 months, it looks like not even 3 people are showing up. What are you supposed to do? What are your options? Are you going to sublease? Are you going to stop leasing at all? Are you going to move into a specific office, which is a smaller office? What are the options that you have? Big salaries and bonuses and RSUs have been given out in 2019. Of course, this year looks different. You don't want to fire employees, or you want to fire employees. What is it that you're trying to do? So reduce the fixed cost that you have. And I don't know an organization that has, not reduced on supplies, on electrical, their utilities, their food supplies, their printing costs. Everybody has come down on certain costs. So how can you maximize those and take away those costs completely? Renegotiate the variable costs. You do have variable costs. Now, how do I kind of make sure that these variable costs are also completely necessary for us? Hiring freezes have happened across the board in every kind of organization. Redistribution of work from these variable employees that you might have to permanent employees. You can also have just commission-based or sales-based compensation for people in your workplace. Restrict on discretionary, have that spending on discretionary mode. Don't spend, and that's a very basic thing to do. I think anybody who's looking at cutting costs would do that. Encourage employees to take paid leave, so you're not sitting on a huge load of PTOs at the end of the year. Have compensation based on performance. That's somewhere where you can kind of reduce and renegotiate your variable costs as well. The third thing that I would like to suggest is reduce the variable costs almost to a minimal. And how do we do that? The best thing and the first thing to do for anybody would be to go back and look at your profit and loss January 2020, and then look at your profit and loss August 2020. What are the costs that you have? How are you working on these costs? What were the items that are essential? Do you have a lot of advertisements? Do you have a lot of supplies that's still coming up? Is there a subscription that you're taking? Is there something else that you're doing? Marketing costs? Is there an HR team that's not really doing overall work for the year? Can you reduce these costs? Can you have compensation that's kind of squeezed in and you're not monthly paying something? So all of these things can help you when you evaluate your financials, or if you hire somebody to evaluate what is the best way to kind of work around this. It will give you a very, very nice idea. And the best thing is it's going to be numerical. So these are all numbers. These are not notional values sitting in your head. It's always nice to plot it on an Excel and see how do the numbers boil down. The final thing that I would like to talk about is make a digital shift. No matter how much we despise this change from during the COVID, it has brought us a great learning that virtually everything can be done online. And this is a beautiful thing that we've learned. I think we should adapt it with both arms and continue doing that. So that's all for me, Bhakti. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Pooja, and very well said, opportunity and calamity. Wow. And convert fixed cost to variable cost. This is a very good point. We should target to reduce costs wherever possible. Pooja, please can you elaborate or give some examples of what you mean by the digital shift or the digital switch that you mentioned?
Of course, that's great that you asked me this question. So when I talk about a digital shift into our working style, of course we're talking about a paperless world, and it's a great world where we are not even if we go down to the theme of we're not really burning down trees or cutting trees, or from there up to the costs reduction that you have with just your paperwork, to how nicely and smartly and fast we are going in terms of efficiently completing our work. So that's one of the strongest things that automation has done for us. The entire experience has become digital. So that's one of the things that can happen when you're digitalizing everything. The second thing that comes to my mind is outsourcing. It has now that everybody is working on a computer, literally from the space of their rooms in their homes, you can hire anyone. And if you can hire anyone to do the job that you want, it could be from a low cost nation. You can take these jobs if you want to somewhere, and if they're not highly confidential and technical and easily doable, you can migrate that job to somewhere where it becomes more cost effective, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. And keeping your business lean is the need of the hour. So Bhakti, I hope that answers your question. I'll put
perfectly. Thank you, Pooja. And before I move on to the next panelist, I would request attendees to post their questions if they have any in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer them via chat during the webinar, but we'll take questions more after the end of the webinar as well. Thank you. Moving on. One very important area is revenue management. How can we meet our revenue goals? Khushbu, please can you share your thoughts on revenue management?
Thank you, Bhakti. We have been reached out on numerous times over the last few months by our clients asking one simple question. How can we increase the cash flow owing to current pandemic situation? As Pooja mentioned, right now having cash liquidity is very important for any business to succeed. We have carefully researched and studied various industries and believe below are the few strategies that you can use. Let's start with simple changes. Reassess your customer base. Form a team and brainstorm using below questions. How is COVID-19 disrupting customer purchasing behavior? How are your sales and delivery capabilities being disrupted by COVID? Based on this assessment, segment your customer base. You may consider creating a pivot to analyze this like the way we have created and that you can see on the screen now. Customer base and yourself. Let's start with the first quadrant on the left. Customer base and yourself are both not disrupted and you are insulated from COVID. That is no significant impact of on either party. Let's term these as double down customers. I would say focus on this segment for growth after pandemic as they still have the purchasing power. Next is the customer base which is insulated from COVID, but due to the disruption in company sales and delivery abilities, it's hard to get revenue from them. In these cases, we need to get creative on how to serve these customers. They can be important contributors for your future growth. These are invest for the future customers. Next is customers, those that are heavily impacted by COVID and are making only deliberate or delayed purchasing decisions. But company, on the other hand, is insulated, it's not impacted. In these cases, companies can reach them with value selling approaches, but at the same time should tread lightly and act with caution. And the last one that I would like to say are the customers that are not purchasing because they are completely disrupted by COVID, as well as the company sales and delivery capabilities are disrupted. In this case, we would say refrain from these kind of customers and refrain from this situation as there is a huge uncertainty attached to it. Once the customer base has been segmented, companies need to establish action plans to define the revenue growth tactics for each specific customer base. There are two major sections we should refocus on to benefit from the target revenue growth tactics. First one is portfolio diversification. Products and services to focus on for each segment should be identified as above. For example, double down customers can be provided more online integration. Another thing that you could do is adjust your market-based value proposition for each segment. For example, provide customized services or products to invest for future segment of customers. This will create a value add and build a brand loyalty. Use this opportunity to narrow our focus on a specific product. Try to get into the product line which has suddenly increased in demand. Recently, I heard that Clorox had made additional production and also increased the types of products that they produced. Another very important aspect of revenue growth is pricing. Price depending on the segment your customers fall in. Example, change to cost plus pricing or competitive pricing or value-based pricing depending on which side of the quadrant you are. What will work best for your company? How to get a premium price for certain products and services. This calls for study of market trends. These days, grocery rates have gone up as the people have started cooking and baking more. How to get consistent margins. You can pursue add-on sales. For example, there are times where the primary product's demand may have reduced, but at the same time, the other ancillary products may have increased. So you can have a bundle of purchase or sale strategy that can help you sell your primary product as well. Once you have understood your customer base and set revenue increasing tactics, act fast. Rapidly execute the tactics to increase the revenue based on what you have learned. Can I have the change of slide, please? Some more ideas that we need to focus on are accurately predict the lifetime value of customer versus the cost to acquire them. Consider offering value to a different customer group, such as by launching a product that is in greater demand right now. For example, I just mentioned Clorox. New sub-brands with a differentiated proposition, such as affordability or to fulfill needs related to COVID-19, expand your online sales and your online products and services where possible. You may have seen of late the Amazon, the small sellers, small business sellers on Amazon have increased. A lot of sellers on Etsy has increased. This is what the current trend is going on. Online sales has a huge potential and we have to tap onto it to remain consistent. Lastly, but not the least, affiliate with the brands that sell the complementary products or services. Recently, BDO has acquired a couple of companies on the East Coast and one of the boutique firms. The boutique firm was specifically in the real estate business, and BDO was doing a little or no advisory on that. And the boutique firm was not doing any advisory. They were doing only tax returns. So by merging, they created a new synergy. One more example that I would like to give is about a car rental company with more than 5,000 locations in China. Like its competitors, the business saw its momentum come to a screeching halt and order volume collapsed by 95% as the coronavirus surged. In the response, company invested in micro-level customer segmentation. This led them to develop new use cases. They discovered, for example, that many tech companies in southern China, in response to the virus, were telling employees not to use public transportation. The company used this insight to send targeted campaigns to promote car rentals. They tested 2 campaigns, rent for 2 days and get 1 free versus rent for 5 days and get 2 days free, and learned that the second offer was much more attractive because the customers could now rent for 5 days for work purposes and get reimbursed, but could use the car for 2 more days on the weekend for personal purposes. What this did was shift of their services from car sales to car rentals and increased their revenue by at least 50%. It doesn't seem real, but it is real. That's it from my end, Bhakti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khushbu. Khushbu, I won't let you go. Can you please help me summarize the rapid revenue growth call of action?
Sure, Bhakti. The COVID-19 pandemic is a wake-up call for all our companies. While most of your competitors are continuing to cope with the shock of the crisis, a few executives are shifting their mindsets to recovery from the crisis. As companies develop their rapid revenue growth playbook through the 3 R's approach, reassess, realign, and realize, it is important to reinforce positive morale within the organization. An economic recovery is sure to come. My plan for action in this case is create a SWAT team, have them brainstorm and create a new process, define success, set out your goals, reach out to the industry experts. Your CPAs are ready to help you. Just reach out to them and boom, act on it. As I said, once you have the customer base analyzed, once you have the strategy done, act on it rapidly. This is from my end, Bhakti. This will help all the businesses.
I'm sure revenue is one of the most important looking item on the P&L. Every business wants to take care of that piece. Thank you so much, Khushbu. So my colleagues so far have already shared ideas about how to manage business and cash flows during this pandemic. The government has also helped the businesses to survive through these difficult times. Most of you must have already taken advantages of the PPP loans and the EIDLs. Neha, please can you dive into these financing opportunities?
Hi Bhakti, thank you. Hello everyone. As my colleagues have beautifully covered how to save, preserve, what to have, similarly undercut the unnecessary what you do not need. Aligned with this thought, I would like to give an update on the financing options that our federal government granted as part of the huge stimulus package to help small businesses and startups. The very first being forgiveness rules for Paycheck Protection Program, commonly referred as PPP loan. Now, businesses with PPP loans have been anxiously waiting for guidance on forgiveness. So to begin with, how does one apply for forgiveness? Good news. Small Business Administrations, that is SBA, has rolled out this Form 3508 and Form 3508 Easy with detailed instructions, and lenders could have their own equivalent forgiveness applications. Hence, the first step would be to approach your lender and get hold of the forgiveness applications. This brings us to our next question. When should the borrower apply for forgiveness? Well, a borrower may submit a loan forgiveness application anytime before the maturity date of the loan, including before the end of the applicable covered period of 8 or 24 weeks. Yes, you heard it right. If the borrower has used all of the loan proceeds for which the borrower is requesting forgiveness, borrower can make an application even before the end of the applicable cover period. However, it is imperative to note here that if you apply for forgiveness before the end of the applicable covered period, any reduction in the forgiven amount would still be computed for the full 8-week or 24-week covered period. Reduction could be on account of more than 25% reduction in the salary or wage, or reduction in the number of full-time equivalent employees, etc., which does not satisfy SBA's safe harbor rule. Given this, what are the key documentation that lenders may require to review the PPP loan forgiveness application? In general, for payroll, it could be bank account statements or third-party payroll service provider reports that document the amount of cash compensation paid to employees. It could be payroll forms such as quarterly file 941s or state equivalent forms. It could be payment receipts, cancelled checks, an account statement that shows employer's contribution to employee health insurance and retirement plans. For non-payroll costs, you could have, for business mortgage interest statements, you could have amortization schedule with bank statement evidencing those eligible payments. For business rent or lease payments, you could have current copy of the lease agreements and again the receipts to evidence those eligible payments. For business utility payments, you could have copy of invoices and those paid during the covered period, etc. So the good news is that there is a timeline for concluding this forgiveness application review process. Now, within 60 days of the receipt of the complete forgiveness application, lender will have to submit its review outcome to SBA for final response. If the loan is fully forgiven, SBA will pay the loan and interest amount to the lender, and lender will classify the subject loan as fully paid and will intimate the borrower. Wow, then nothing further needs to be done. Do note, as applicable, SBA will deduct the EIDL advance amount from the forgiveness amount. Now, what if the loan is not forgiven or partially forgiven? Well, the unforgiven amount will be classified as a repayable loan, and the lender will intimate the borrower as to when would the first installment become due. The terms of the loan would be as per the promissory note or loan document that was executed in connection with the PPP loan. Now, heading to the next aspect, that is Economic Injury Disaster Loan, commonly referred as EIDL. While PPP applications have closed on August 8, 2020, however, SBA is still accepting applications for EIDL, a loan which can be as high as $2 million. However, the amount really depends on your business gross revenue and its cost of goods sold or services provided. In my view, this is a good financing option available to startups or small businesses to cover 6 months worth working capital requirement. EIDL unquestionably has favorable repayment terms, which makes this program very valuable if you can get approved for a loan. While you all would have heard about the eligibility numerous times, at the cost of repetition, I would like to reiterate that sole proprietors with or without employees, independent contractors, small businesses, cooperatives, and employees-owned businesses, and small businesses with 500 or fewer employees are all eligible for EIDLs. Please note that the window for accepting EIDL application will expire on December 21, 2020. Regarding EIDL advance, just to refresh our memories, this EIDL advance or grant was made within 3 days of the submission of the loan application, ranging from $1,000 per employee for a maximum of $10,000, and was forgivable even if the main loan was approved. However, as of July 11, 2020, SBA has stopped processing EIDL advance or grant requests because the program funds have been fully allocated. But this has not impacted the process of applications for EIDL main loan. Now, while this main loan is per se not forgivable, however, favorable repayment terms, etc., makes it a lucrative option to consider. Further, would just like to mention that SBA is keen and encouraging more businesses to step forward and apply for these loans. Hence, have provided for special provisions in the updated rules to make it easier to get an EIDL loan. Such special incentives include, Pooja, if I may request you to please mute. To connect back. Yeah, so the special incentives that have been provided by EIDL includes waiver of personal guarantee on loans below 200,000, waiver of the test as to whether you can get credit elsewhere, waiver in the usual requirement that you needed to be in a business for a year before the declaration. Further, SBA will rely on your credit score instead of the usual determination of ability to repay. If you have trouble with a credit score, the SBA has authority to determine if a reasonable alternative can be used. Apart from these, there are various other loans and schemes available to benefit small businesses. One such that I could remember as of now is Community Advantage Recovery Loan. This is a pilot program to increase SBA guaranteed loans to small businesses in underserved areas. The uniqueness of this program is that it provides you both technical and financial assistance to small businesses to revamp their operations for COVID-19 environment. Technical assistance include retooling the applicant's business model, shifting to an online presence, building cash reserves, and expense reduction strategies. This loan must be originated no later than September 27, 2020, and fully disbursed before October 1, 2020. You can reach out to us for further details. Before I conclude, I would like to briefly mention that there is always a ray of hope and opportunity knocking at our door. Hence, always stay prepared for that opportunity. There are still investors who are looking for new business opportunities despite the economic circumstances. Strategically, one should consider when to ask for another round of funding because your business valuation may drop. Investors will scrutinize the teams and market potential even more closely than they have before. They want to be sure your startup truly understands its target client or customer and what the market needs right now, given the current climate. As competition drops away, you could have a unique shot at raising funds. VC partners recognize that this is an opportunity to test your ability to make it through tough times. Without question, some startups will get funding, they will succeed and exceed expectations because they have gone through adversity. We have a team of experts working who could help you in this journey of yours. Help in creating the reinvestment plans, the investment pitches, supported by sound business strategies and data-backed projection. So please feel free to approach us. With this, I conclude my presentation and I will hand it back to you, Bhakti.
Thank you so much, Neha. It's wonderful to see how the government is also helping us. Neha, I remember some time ago when the SBA loan started, there was a lot of questions around what is allowed, who is allowed to take PPP, who is not allowed. So many questions. Will it be audited? Not. Neha, can you please tell us, will the SBA audit or review the PPP applications?
Wow, very relevant question, Bhakti, because almost all our clients kind of, have asked this. So considering, a simple thing, okay, considering that government has funded approximately $525 billion in PPP loans, and they have approved more than 5 million applications, it certainly wouldn't be reasonable if they were to review each application. Hence, SBA has put in a threshold and they have come back to say that they would review all loans in excess of $2 million, in addition to any other loan that, of course, deem appropriate. But we still await, detailed guidance on the review process. Hope this helps.
Thank you so much. It really helps, Neha. So now our colleagues have discussed these points and strategies to help us help the startups survive. To conclude, revisit your budgets, manage your cash flows, reduce costs, and reassess your revenue targets. Take advantage of the government provided financing. The world as we know is not going to be as certain as it was a few months ago. Good businesses should and will be able to survive and even rebuild after COVID. However, startups need to take this time to reevaluate how to operate and adapt to the new reality. With this, we conclude the webinar for today, but we are very happy to take any questions that have been posted on the question box. If not, please do so right now. Let me go through and see if there are any questions coming in. Neha, another question for you. I have taken PPP loans. Can I apply for EIDL also?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Neha. Another question. I don't see much coming in, but let's take up something else. Girls, I have some questions for you that I'm sure every business is wanting to discuss about right now or want answers to it right now. Jyoti, I have a question for you. What is the best way to keep a check on the working capital?
Oh yeah, sure. So the most important thing is to always keep a track of your current position. Manage your working capital really well. Working capital, when I say the net working capital, is basically the current assets less liabilities. At any point of time, you should always keep the length of the working capital shortened. As I explained earlier, you should try to collect all your accounts receivables, which have been pending from a very long time. Or you should try to avoid your expenses, try to pay them a little later. And even for inventory, try to sell out all the obsolete inventories. That's how you would try to keep your working capital at its most optimum position. That's for you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much. Khushbu, I want to know something about the revenues. What is the best way to decide the complementary business lines?
So Bhakti, there are a lot of different options we have when we have to decide complementary. Let me give you a small example. As of now, the clothing industry has a lot of reduction in its business as people had to stop going out to the malls, and the only way they could do is online shopping. But at the same time, due to the restrictions, people were not going to meet anybody, and so all the office, let's say for example, office wear clothing, the demand for these kind of clothes were less. However, what couple of companies did was increase their sales. They moved their inventory and they started preparing masks. One of the things that they did, which was high in demand. As I said in my segment before, that changing or introducing a value offering product by launching a product that is greater in demand. What these clothing companies did was they moved from clothing to creating masks. Not only that, they also increased their production more on track pants and gym wear and a lot of so their materials got used, and at the same time their cost got reduced. So based on what resources you have available, I would say you have to assess and see what complementary business lines you can get into by use of maximizing of use of the resources you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Khushbu. I really agree to that. At one point when the shelter in place started, there was no mask available. Any place you look, you can't find masks. But now all the clothing companies have come up with masks. So definitely a shift in the product line or the business line helps a lot. You're not shifting from the clothing industry. You're just, broadening your horizons. So very well said, Khushbu. Thank you so much. Pooja, I want to, can you explain the attendees some ideas how they can reduce the fixed costs?
Absolutely, Bhakti. As I've mentioned before, rent and salaries is one part and a huge example of what we do. And of course, the analysis, looking at the numbers of how much rent has gone in, what's your cash liquidity right now, what is the revenue that's anticipated that's coming in. And these are some of the big chunky numbers that you can look at and work around. Apart from that, I think the salaries of most people need to be broken down. If you're a very small firm and that you understand that you're not going to have the admins working all the time, you're not going to have a marketing team or a sales team that is constantly generating revenue, you can make it more of, a compensation based on performance. And that can either be outsourced if you want, or you can continue to have the employees that you currently have. You can continue to do that. Again, costs such as utilities, if you have security, if you have equipment, things that are completely not used, can definitely be warded off, and these costs can be again reduced, and this money can be efficiently used in other places. So that would answer your question, Bhakti.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Neha, when are these forgiveness applications due? Have they already started? Can you please explain some more on that?
Sure. Yeah, so forgiveness applications are due at any point in time when a borrower feels that they're done using the funds. They can apply for the forgiveness application. And also the forms have already been rolled out by the SBA, and I'm sure lenders have prepared their equivalent applications as well. So there is no timeline per se. If you believe that whatever funds you've got, you've used it optimally for the desired purposes, go ahead and approach your bank and get the at least relevant applications in place so that you know and you're well prepared what all is required from your end to submit and to claim 100% forgiveness.
Thank you so much, Neha. I'm not sure if there are many questions, but if not, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. The email IDs are up. The email IDs there. Sasha, if you can move on to the next slide where we can see the IDs. And please reach out to us for any questions that you have. We'll be happy to answer them anytime. Just to conclude, you know, some of the major companies have started during the recessions over the past century. Bill Gates, he founded Microsoft in 1975. That was the same year when there was a recession. Many best known companies were found during the Great Recession times of 2009, including Uber and Airbnb. So you startups, COVID, I'm sure everyone's going to do great and survive through. We CPAs are always here to help you all grow. Thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, sorry, before I conclude, I just got one more question. Can you give some more details on forgiveness? Is there any specific rules to apply? Neha, I'll ask you this question.
Sure. So as I mentioned during my presentation, the details are that the very first question is, how do you really apply? So for that, please approach your bank, your financial institution, get hold of the forgiveness application. When do you need to approach? Well, if you believe that you have used the funds fully, then go ahead and approach the bank. Do not delay further. And the third part is that what all documentation you would need to justify forgiveness. Then maybe the first I would say is payroll related documents. So have those reports handy, the payroll quarterly reports, have those documents, details handy. And of course, in terms of calculation and in terms of how to interpret and how to make sure that you get 100% forgiveness, approach your CPAs. We have a team of experts who are dealing with this forgiveness application. So feel free to approach us anytime. Hope this helps.
Neha, there's always another question added to this. Are the applications the same or do they vary from bank to bank?
Yeah, so since banks have got liberty to kind of come up with their equivalent application forms, we might see some variation, but it will not be very drastic. You know, you might see variation in terms of the documentation requirement or the timeline, etc., just to make it more specific, but it will not be very drastic.
Okay, and the 8-week, 24-week, you know, drama that's going on, when should you apply? Is there something that you can share with us on that?
Sure. So the very first thing is applicants who got the loan before June 5th, 2020, they have got this window of 8-week and 24-week cover period. So they can either choose 8-week to use all the funds, or they can opt for 24-week. However, for applicants who've got the loan after June 5th, 2020, they can straight away make use of the 24-week covered period window. So there is nothing so complicated about it. It is just that if you have received a loan on a particular date, just make use of the loan. You still have 24 weeks to use it for payroll as well as for other non-payroll costs. As per the law, of course, you must use at least 60% towards the payroll cost to claim forgiveness. 100% forgiveness, and the balance you can use for other utilities costs like utility and interest on business mortgages, etc.
Okay, thank you so much, Neha. So we understand that there is a lot of things that startups or any businesses might need to, you know, take the decisions correctly and make sure that they get maximum benefit. Certain things like these PPP application forgiveness may be a little complicated. So we would highly recommend approaching your CPAs to make the right decisions and get maximum benefit. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending the webinar today. Please reach out if you all have any other questions to us. Thank you.